Welcome to the Effortlessly Abundant Life podcast, where we will dive into the mindset, spirituality, and practical tools to have more of what you want with less effort. I'm your host, Natalia, a mindset shifter, certified life and success coach, and hypnotherapist who is obsessed with making your life feel good from the inside out. So let's dive in today's episode in 3, 2, 1. Hey, I am so excited for today's episode. I can't even tell you how lucky are we to have Dr. M, aka Elizabeth, who I adore and love, and so fortunate to know and meet. And I can't for you guys to meet her as well, where we're going to talk about spirituality, about health, about wellness, about life. Let's just see where this conversation is going to take us. So with no further ado, Dr. M, welcome to Effortlessly Abundant Life podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I'm insanely grateful that the universe brought you into my life, and you've made such a tremendously positive impact on me and on all the lives that you get to touch. So thank you.
Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you, love. So for those who don't know you, can you kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you?
I would love to. I am an internal medicine physician, and I get to teach residents and students as well. I work primarily in a hospital setting, and have been doing so for over 10 years. And getting to be a part of people's lives as they go through some of the most challenging times of their life is, I think, a very sacred part of my job. And so um, I, I love seeing that, and I also love being there for my colleagues and for my students and residents. Um, Being in healthcare is hard. What we carry is a lot, more than we sometimes let on. And so I've really tried to build systems that help patients and help the people that I work with and teach.
I love that. So let's go a little bit back. What made you to decide this path, right? It's not easy to become a doctor. So what kind of made you, what was that inner calling, would you call it? What
Yes.
made you kind of choose this path?
I have two very strong parents who were both leaders in the community. My father is also a physician, and he wanted me to follow in his footsteps, and so I did. And I got to learn about being a doctor early on. And my mom is a very strong woman leader in our community, and she also made a tremendous impact and instilled in me that we need to leave the world better than how we found it. So both of them really encouraged my journey, and it wasn't easy. There was times that I wished I thought of doing something else, but then I realized there wasn't anything else for me. And the universe really lined things up so that everything happened, and I ended up where I am now.
I love this. I love this. Aren't we so lucky? I would be very happy to be a patient
Oh, thank
wherever
you.
you are, that's for sure. So what kind of the things that surprised you when you got into the hospital setting that you never knew or that you never think about?
A few things. Um, I didn't realize the suffering that I would see and how to deal with that. Um, I also didn't really know how much we had to learn to cope with. That's not taught to us. No one teaches you how to lose a patient that died right in front of you, and then you have to go on to the next patient as if nothing happens. No one teaches you that. Um, and I thought that once you became a doctor, you'd know all the answers and that you'd be able to do amazing things and fix everything, but often we can't. And so those were some of the things that were surprising to me. And remember my mom the day before I graduated medical school, she said, "This is the only or the last day that you will not be a doctor." the rest of your life, you're going to be a doctor and you will carry all of your patients with you. No matter where you go, there's not a time that you can totally shut it off. So know that that will be your gift and your burden, that you will carry that. And
Wow.
so that was something that really stuck with me, and it's a joy and sometimes a challenge to carry all of that.
I'm so interested to hear. So, how you feel people around you are dealing with loss or failed treatment or things, that couldn't really control. How do you feel your colleagues are handling, and what some of the things that help you to cope with that?
I think that when people end up succumbing to their condition or their disease and we lose them, that in order to not feel so bad, that sometimes people disconnect in the end, because we don't want to feel responsible. Um, but sometimes the most important time for us to show up and be present.
Mm,
And taking care of people at the end of life is a very sacred time. Um, but when we can't fix things, that's very hard. We want to. That's why people go into various fields, right? Is we want to make things better. And when we can't, it can be very difficult. And so people struggle with that. There's a lot of poor coping skills in the hospital. It can look like anger or um, things as severe as suicide because of losing a patient that we don't process it well.
wow.
Um, so, and there's actually a term for this emotional trauma that healthcare workers in particular can get. It's called the second victim effect, and it happens when healthcare workers feel responsible in some way for a bad outcome. It's different than grief that we get after losing a patient, like to cancer or things like that. It's something that we feel responsible in some way that we should have done something different. And so that emotional trauma can affect people in a variety of negative ways if not dealt with properly.
Wow.
So,
Absolutely. And what are the things that help you along the way to kind of cope with it on a daily basis?
um, learning about that whole phenomenon was tremendous for me because I myself suffered from it and didn't know what it was. And I actually almost left medicine because I had um, that that effect. And so for me, being able to treat myself like a friend or a human and say, like, process, this is what happened. And then there's actually like 6 defined stages of second victim effect that you can go through. So helping myself through those. And I also developed a coaching program to help others go through this, and have spread it in our local academic institution, to try to help people early on learn to recognize this in themselves. And my favorite piece of it is um, that you get out your emotional first aid kit.
Mm,
And we're all very good if we see someone bleeding, right? We know to hold pressure, we get out the band-aids, we're all about it. But when the cut is invisible and more emotional, we forget to get out our first aid kit. So teaching people, including myself, how to have a first aid kit that addresses these emotions and to get that out early on instead of when it's too late, is really important.
I highly agree with catching it early, because when we suppress emotion, it becomes the buildup energy that becomes so heavy that unfortunately also manifests through diseases, through body
Mhm,
aches, through so much that it's just unnecessary. And a lot of times it can be just fixed by processing, being present, but we're so scared of feeling,
mhm,
we're so scared of going to that place of uncomfortable, just feeling uncomfortable.
mhm.
But when we don't realize that by suppressing, it's
Yeah.
just going to get more uncomfortable. So it's going to come anyway. So we
Mm-hmm.
want to kind of address it firsthand, let it move through us, let all the feelings, all the grief, all the tears to move through us, because we are
Mm-hmm.
human beings. The
Yeah.
fact that and I'm sure you can relate to it, people think, oh, well, if you wear your, your, oh, I lost the word.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah.
If you, I'm sorry.
Like your armor or your,
The armor, but let's say your uniforms, right? You wear
my
your
white coat.
uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
you wear all the things that like your tag, whatever. That's it. You become this like superhuman. But underneath all of that, there's a human being that actually wants to help and actually wants to fix things and actually cares. And every person, it's not just a symptom and a
Right.
protocol of treatment. There's a
Mm-hmm.
story, there is emotions, there's a family, there is so much in that one
Mm-hmm.
person. And it's very hard. It's very, very hard. And so can you share with us a little bit more about the Second Victim program? If you want to share a little bit about the steps, a little bit,
Yeah.
what kind of helped your colleagues when you kind of were doing those coaching programs?
So I don't take credit for the 6 defined steps as were documented in the literature. And what I in the coaching program I developed is to help people recognize that they're experiencing this early on. I ask for referrals from leaders the second that they recognize that a bad event happened or bad outcome, and to refer people to me right then, because some of the people that have been referred early on were able. They don't have to go through all the steps.
That's
That they
amazing.
recover very quickly. But for the others, we we go through the different steps. We set a deadline for them beating themselves up because that is part of it. We
Yes.
talk about, right. So we set a deadline and say, after this point, you cannot beat yourself up. We write a list of should haves. I should have done this, and then we burn it or throw it or write it on a rock and throw it in the water some way of like letting yourself experience that and getting rid of it. And then we talk about what's in the emotional first aid kit. That looks different to everyone, whether that's walking their dog or spending time with people they love, or um, even sitting down and writing down what they remember about their patient that they might have lost. These different ways of going of to figure out how to heal that hurt and in their heart and move on. And so this is not a very large program yet, but I hope for it to grow and to be an inspiration for others.
It's
Because I Go ahead.
I'm saying it's so needed, especially
Yeah.
after COVID. I feel
Mhm.
that wave of this disaster just everywhere. And literally
Mhm.
every country in this world was experiencing the same thing, where we lost so much so fast, so quickly. And there was just like it was so overwhelming for everybody.
Yes.
And I think this program is so much needed, not only for I feel for every facility, like every
Mhm.
teacher, every person that is in a place where
Mhm.
he's a leader in his community in every way or organization. And we all leaders of our own lives, right? So we
Yes.
all need that. So
Mhm.
in terms of spirituality,
Yes.
in terms of mindset work, how
Mhm.
that help you to kind of cope with this vast of emotions and all this craziness on a daily basis?
I think that was my saving grace during the chaos of the pandemic, taking care of patients with COVID that we honestly had no idea what we were doing at first.
Yeah.
And it and we were scared for them, we were scared for us and going through all that. So having a belief that one day we would all get through it was really important to me, and trying to be a positive influence on those around me and keep up other people's spirits was huge. Um, in general, not just with COVID, I I find that it's important to address like the spiritual needs of patients too, even if that's just connection. It doesn't have to have a name like a religion, but human beings need connection. I always tell families that love is the best medicine, and it's not something that I can prescribe with my prescription pads. So I'm always grateful
I love
when people have that in their lives. But people need structure and positive thoughts and connection, in addition to needing their physical ailments addressed. Um, so it made it a lot harder during COVID for us to maintain connection, right? And so I think that people suffered in different ways because of that. Um, Prior to COVID, I assigned some of my patients like to go to bingo or um, to volunteer in their communities because having a purpose, um, and feeling part of a greater whole, helps you take better care of yourself too.
and kind of take your mind out of this whole journey,
Right.
you get almost, you let the disease define you and now you
Mhm.
become that.
Yes.
You're so much bigger than your disease. You're so much bigger
Mhm.
than your current situation. And it's
Mhm.
about kind of actually tapping into the solution, tapping into the healed version of yourself.
Mhm.
And life is not over. Life actually, I believe that every disease is a way for the body just to communicate, say, hey, I'm in balance right now. But it's not just the body, because as you said so beautifully, it's connected to the soul, it's connected to a
Mhm.
spiritual part of us. And we're still human beings in this human form, but this is where this connection is so powerful, where we can combine the spiritual and
Mhm.
combine the Western medicine and kind of bring the best of the best, and really help people to heal internally and externally
Mhm.
at the same time. And I think that is where the world is heading. I feel that it's becoming the norm. Not people look at you like you have three heads when you talk about faith and love and all the things you mentioned,
Mhm.
because it's so
Right.
true. If you, and I'm sure you've seen with your patients, there's some people that don't believe and don't have any faith, and you just see how their body is responding to that
Mhm.
belief, right? And some people that are have this horrible, let's say, God forbid, they have, I don't know, a year or two to live, but they decided they're gonna go through it and their body's gonna heal, and they healed.
Mhm.
Our faith and our decision and our internal kind of spirit is so powerful. It's so
Yes.
powerful. So can you give us like a little example from one of your patients, of course, as much as you can share or not share, but generally, did you had anybody that you felt that because you had no faith, it actually went downhill, and you had somebody that he had a miracle because he was in his faith?
Let me think. One moment. Yes.
Okay,
Um,
take your
it's
time.
okay. I think of a lot of examples of patients who have no purpose, and I see them again and again in the hospital, and it's very sad that they don't have loved ones, and they just kind of give up. And so um, we see that a lot, unfortunately. Um, and then I had a patient. He didn't have a miracle happen; his body was healed, but he went. He had leukemia.
Mhm.
He met the love of his life later in life, and he told everyone he met that, you should never give up on love. He told
Oh,
this to absolutely everyone.
I have chills.
And um, he was always very cheerful, even when he was miserable. He spread love. He was in the hospital a lot. And even in his dying days, he told people like never give up on love, never give up on love. And so he was able to pass away peacefully around people he loved and going out with a message of positivity to the world, even though his body didn't heal. He brought great love to those around him.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow. I feel
So
like it's
it's
such an important message. And when you hear it from somebody like that, you kind of reflect on your own life and say, "Oh my God." And
mhm,
I remember that Gary V, I don't know if you know him, he's almost like an influencer.
mhm,
And one of the things he always said, like, if you feel unhappy with your life, go to a senior house, go to the
mhm,
hospital, go talk to people and patients that are literally, as you said, like they have, I don't know, a very short time amount to live, and
mhm.
ask them, what are your biggest regret? What is your biggest mission?
Yes.
And all of them say the same thing: live your life to the fullest, right?
Yes.
Love, don't give up on love. What are the other
Mhm.
messages that you heard from people that were kind of,
Um, a lot of them said that they wish that they hadn't spent so much time at work, that they spent more time
wow.
just enjoying life, that they live to work instead of work to live and to support their life. And so they also said that they worried about things that didn't matter in the long term, that they spend a lot of time concerned about what other people would think instead of just going after their dreams. Um, and other people have also said that they wish that they didn't hold grudges,
Mm,
um, and offered forgiveness before it was too late.
oh,
Um,
so
so
good.
those are are many of the things, but a lot of it is that they wish that they didn't waste so much time, doing things that didn't matter as much to them.
It's so true. Such a great reminder for us. And we all kind of know it, but for you to see it on a daily basis,
Mhm,
it just gives it so much more power, and you
mhm,
realize so much more about yourself and your life. And I
mhm.
think if everybody would just have only one day in your
Yeah.
life, walking your shoes
Oh,
and talking to these people and understanding how is life so precious,
mhm,
how every day is not guaranteed, how it is short, but not from a place of it's short to the point where we need to just like understand that every day is a gift, truly.
yes.
And it's not about, doing crazy things. It's just living purposely and intentionally. And when you talk to people, listen and express your love and don't hold to anger and all the things we kind of think they matter. But in the end of the day, when we close to these type of situations, we realize what truly matters, what is always love, always compassion to ourselves and others, and living life to the fullest, God. And
Mhm.
it's so amazing to me that, we all kind of know it, but we don't really allow and give ourselves the permission to do it. We all understand
Yes.
it's important and we all understand the concept of it, but
Mhm,
we don't really allow ourselves to truly open up and be vulnerable and um feel and you know to feel all the way. If it
yes.
makes sense.
I completely agree, and we don't appreciate our health often until it's gone.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
Absolutely.
that we part of loving ourselves is making sure our bodies are taken care of too, um, and we forget that
Oh yeah.
often. We especially and sometimes it's in the midst of the best of intentions of taking care of everyone else, we forget, um, to look after our own bodies and what they need, for
It's so
sure.
true. It's so true. I feel that, the body is such a good indicator for our subconscious, right? Our body
Mhm,
is a representation of our subconscious, which is very interesting. And we almost kind of like used to abuse it and push it to the edge until it's just, get sick, right?
yep,
And that's when we start to listen. And I always say, don't wait when
mhm,
it's already too late. It's
mhm,
always take those intentional understand like your body is here to serve you, but also you need to honor it and respect it. And
mhm,
what like, and not just, beat it to the ground. And take
Yes.
this, it's not going to the gym to be skinny. It's about going to the
Right.
gym and celebrate your body and move
Mm-hmm.
your body, which is so important. And we
Mm-hmm.
always do things in order to get something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or look a certain way, get some kind of
Yep.
validation, but not because we really want to celebrate and honor and respect ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes through
Yes.
physical, if I'm talking about
Mm-hmm.
going to the gym, all the way to eating, all the way
Mm-hmm.
how you talk to yourself, all the way to everything, literally.
Yes.
So, what are the
Yes.
things you can kind of give us as maybe tips? What kind of helped to build a better relationship with our bodies, with our health?
I think it's important, and this is a concept that I've learned fairly recently, is that we should eat good food and exercise and sleep because we love ourselves, not because we hate ourselves. We often hate our bodies, so we punish it by dieting like crazy and exercising too much. And taking things in moderation, things that we can be consistent with and can sustain because we love ourselves and want good health for ourselves long term. That's the better mindset to have. Taking that time to invest in yourself early on will bring back so much later on in life, because oftentimes we see that it's um, it gets to be too late to completely reverse a lot of the effects that you can and have from poor health. And so, um, I think also not being afraid to speak up and ask for doctor questions if you don't understand. It's good to connect with the people that are taking care of you, um, and to be your own advocate, to learn about things, make sure to use reputable sources when you're learning about health terms or things like that. But speak up and ask. We want you to be able to understand what your body's going through when you have serious conditions. But the more you can learn about your health, the more you can take care of yourself early on, the better.
I love that. So when you say good sources,
Yes.
you probably have a lot of those patients coming to you. Oh, I just Googled this and I watched this, and
Right.
they feel like they know everything. And how
Yes.
you, how somebody can actually educate themselves and kind of know what are the options he has. What are your best
Okay.
suggestions for that?
Look for sources that come from a medical journal or a university. Blogs can be educational for sharing experiences, but they're not the scientific evidence that show what works. So be careful about what you take as truth from different sources. I know we use Instagram and social media as a be all end all source, but cross reference that with studies that have looked at the conditions that you have to make sure that it's in alignment with what you have and what you want, where you want to get to with your health.
It's so true. It's so true. I feel like when you just look out anywhere, and it's so easy, everybody can just post anything and say everything,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just take it as a truth. And
Mm-hmm.
and I know whatever you believe, it's very powerful,
Right.
right? So
Yes.
if you believe that, I don't know, this is going to be horrible for you, although it is
Mm-hmm.
going to be helpful for you, your body is going to almost like
Reject it.
rejected.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's so important to do your
Mm-hmm.
research, but also have trust as well.
Yes.
That it's also something that I believe that it's safe for us to trust. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we all have good intentions, and we all have a common target, let's put it that way, and target
Yes.
that we want to all be in the same way, I guess.
Yes.
So, yes, amazing. So, what is kind of like in terms of where you see the future in terms of the medical field?
Part of healthcare in the US scares me because of insurance, honestly, that we need to advocate that we should be able to get the best care possible and not be like have to get so much approval from insurance because they want to cut costs. We should be able to get the best care. Um, but I also do see the integration of um, of food as medicine and early prevention and having community as a determinant of how the whole, like everyone in the community's health is going to be. Like I see healthcare as moving in a direction that's even more holistic and looking at the whole person even more than just the disease. Um, so I have some positive thoughts for the future and some concerns that will need to be addressed. But overall, I think that we're gaining so much knowledge about how disease states work, and the different options we have to prevent and combat it. Um,
Interesting. Just kind of like a thought that came to me, a question.
yes.
Are most diseases that you see are caused by genetics or because of environment or stress? What do you think, kind of like from your experience, what is the main cause of the diseases you see with your patients?
I see a lot of elderly patients with things like diabetes and high blood pressure and um, conditions like kidney disease, heart disease, and strokes because of those other conditions. So, a lot of people have a familial or genetic predisposition to it, but it may or may not happen depending on their lifestyle and how much they exercise and things like that. So, some of both, but the biggest impact is how we treat our bodies, how much sleep, how we manage stress, how um, how good our diets and exercises are. All of those things play a huge role.
It's so true. And I think more than anything, how we handle stress. I
Yes.
think literally, if correct me if I'm wrong, but 90% of most diseases can be eliminated if we would eliminate and center ourselves and move ourselves from the flight or fight to our center, to our peace, to our harmony. Because I feel the body is always repairing itself. It always
Hmm.
wants to clean itself. And that's what it does 24/7 without us knowing. Um, and we almost kind of like living in a very high pressure life, that and on top of what we kind of internalize and what we causing to ourselves, that is just magnifying all these diseases that could have been prevented just if we learned how to manage stress. So what are the best ways that you know to kind of manage stress?
So I find that learning how to breathe well is one of the quickest and um, most efficient way to reduce stress. And I even tell my patients sometimes when we're at a moment um, to take 5 deep breaths, and then we kind of reset, and that helps with a lot of different things that they may be going through. So learning to breathe well, good sleep is like huge for being able to deal with stress. Having the connections that you can talk with people to process what you go through, and then doing a lot of inner healing work. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it talks about the origins of how we figured out that post traumatic stress disorder was, in fact,
Wow.
an entity of its own, and how it manifested as like physical symptoms. But it took a long time for them to recognize it as such. So, learning how through meditation, through therapy, through whatever modality works for you, to figure out where past traumas might be, how to cope with your current day to day stress, like what works for you, be that exercise, journaling, whatever have you, to proactively deal with the stress is very helpful.
I'm gonna just add to that, a lot of people kind of, when they hear meditation, they get all kinds of
Hmm.
feelings, because everybody using this word, but it's more about being present. It's about
Yes.
being, it's about feeling, it's about truly being present in whatever situation you are in, even if it's being stressed, the worst thing you can do is just kind of like brush it off and kind of
Yeah.
distract yourself. It's actually, as we kind of mentioned from your second victim, it's first of all, process it, right? It's just be with that. And I think that's the hardest part for so many people is kind of like facing their fears, facing their noises, facing their judgmental voice, that inner voice that tells them they're not enough, they're not good enough, all these things that we kind of
Yes.
lie to ourselves. But by listening to that, you can
Mm-hmm.
suddenly take a kind of almost like look at it from a different perspective, because
Mm-hmm.
now you're aware of it. Now
Yes.
it's not just running in the background, but now you're putting light onto it, a projector on it. Now it doesn't have as much power anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And now, after obviously it takes time, it literally took me 4 years to come to
Wow.
a point where I am not, it's not on automatic pilot, like where my mind is just running and running and running, where I can just be still with myself and be okay with that. At the beginning, I couldn't even do that. I was so afraid to like feel, and I always felt like it's not productive. That was a story that I told myself. The meditation is not productive. Like I could do something more important than sitting here for 15 minutes and breathe. This just looked so
Mm-hmm.
stupid to me at the beginning. But that's exactly what I needed. And
Yes.
when I really took the time to breathe and I took the time to start to listen to my voice and kind of it's almost like observe it, and then suddenly it doesn't have any power. And it's like the more I did it, it had less and less and less power. And then, whoops, there's this another voice that called intuition that is
Yes.
speaking through me, and it's a subtle voice. But now I'm focusing on that voice, and now you can kind of differentiate between your head, your intuition, what other people say, but only you can get that through the observation, through the feeling, through the processing. And I wish there was like a one fix, like, oh, you go to the gym and everything is fixed. But
Right.
it's really about being with yourself and not
Mm-hmm.
running away from it. And I really highly recommend to anybody who's listening, if you are allergic to meditation, I have the Mindset Up Accelerator where I guide
Yes.
you through breath work and also meditation, which is easier when you're being guided. Because when you sit by yourself and just like listening to your thought, it could be petrified.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have somebody guiding you, it's a little bit easier. Another way that I like to do is to light a candle and just focus on that candle and look at
Mm-hmm.
the flame and just kind of see how it moves and how big it gets and how, how it fluctuates, and kind of look at the colors. And that's really, really, really helpful for people just to kind of focus on something, and put a timer for 5 minutes at the beginning,
Yes.
and then 6, and then 7, and then 8, and then 10. And then you see by the time it may be going to take you a year or two, but you're going to become a different person. You're not going to run on autopilot anymore. You're going to have a second to not be reactive, but you're always going to be more proactive, because there's room in between your reactions and your thoughts.
Yes.
So that's kind of like where I wanted to put my 2 cents in.
That's amazing. And your coaching practice has dramatically helped me heal. You can't heal things until you feel them and process them. And you have been a tremendous guide for me in doing that. So
My love.
I highly recommend you to everyone, and
Thank
I
you so
appreciate you.
Thank you, my love. And
Yeah.
it's true that it's interesting. I feel everybody, no matter how aware you are and how you're advancing your awakening
Mhm.
process in your spiritual journey, we all need a guide. We all need
Mhm.
somebody to shed light, to tell things, to kind of almost like reflect back what we're not seeing in ourselves and what we are in our head. We all in our heads. And this
Yes.
is a beautiful thing that I think everybody, especially if you're dealing with death on a daily basis, you're dealing with loss, you're dealing with really extreme situation. When I was in the army, I was actually stationed in the hospital for 2 years. And as an 18-year-old girl who had no idea about anything, they put me as a representation of the army, where I would make sure that the soldiers would get good care if they were cancer patients or they just came from the battlefield. Like, can you imagine? It's insane. And I almost now remember my entire service because it was so traumatic. It's not easy. It's a lot to process death and process seeing, no hand, no, like all these things that, you can't even, it's not something it's not normal. Let's put it that way. So let's not normalize that it's not normal and help. It's not that it's a bonus or it's something that I feel every caregiver, doctor, or anybody who is in that position like yourself should have somebody to help them to process things, not just through therapy, but through different modalities to truly help them to tap into their center. I think it's so important.
I agree.
And
I appreciate you being that for me. Yes.
Yes, my love. And hopefully you can spread the second victim program and your coaching to more and more and more people. So where can people find more about your work? What do you do?
I don't have a place for that yet, but I hope to present it at conferences coming up. But Google Second Victim Effect, and there are other coaching programs elsewhere that have good websites up that can help.
Amazing. So you'll send me the links that we can put it in the show note in the bottom. And yes, thank you, my love. Thank you so much for being here and just bringing your energy, your experience, your light. I am so grateful for you. And I truly know that anybody listening to you are in love with you the way I am. And you are such an amazing, I feel like the medical world is a better world because of you. And I'm not just saying it because I wish everybody were like you, because I know I've been through people that just, let's put it that way, the doctors that would, they didn't have the best intentions. And to have people in like yourself in this place that feels so cold sometimes and so strict, and have a soul and have somebody that truly cares, it just means the world. So I just want you to know how appreciated you are and how needed you are. And with that, guys, we're going to finish today's episode. If you have any follow-up questions, let us know. And maybe we'll come over for another session and answer your questions.
Perfect. Thank you.